Well, it is a deliberate choice, I think. The RBI is allowing the rupee to depreciate. This is not a very drastic depreciation. Of course, when you look at things like 90 rupees to the dollar being a level that is close to being breached, etc., it seems rather dramatic. But the reality is that the rupee has depreciated less than 10% against the dollar this year. And if you look at periods like 2011 and 2013, there were two 6 month periods during which the rupee depreciated by 15% on each occasion within a 6 month period. So that is a drastic depreciation. That is something like a currency crisis when you have an uncontrolled depreciation. The current depreciation is primarily because uh, we are facing adverse tariff situations with the U.S. The U.S. has raised tariffs on more than half of India's exports to the U.S. to 50%. Those are prohibitively high tariff rates, and therefore uh, the RBI is providing a little bit of support to exporters by allowing the currency to depreciate. But this is not a drastic depreciation. It is not an uncontrolled depreciation. If you look at the level of India's foreign exchange reserves, they've hovered around $690 billion for the past 5 months. Around the end of May, they were close to $690 billion. They're just marginally below $690 billion now. So no real, it is not a panic sell off or anything. It is a controlled depreciation to offset the impact of the high tariffs imposed by the US. It's important to understand that India has a very small current account deficit. Um, the second quarter of of each fiscal year is seasonally the weakest quarter. But this year, the deficit in that quarter was only 1.3% of GDP. The previous quarter was 0.2% of GDP deficit. And the quarter before that, the fourth quarter of the last fiscal year, there was a substantial current account surplus. So if you look at the latest 4 quarters, so latest 12-month period, the current account deficit is only 0.3% of GDP. That is a very small deficit. Of course, at the moment, the equity market looks a little bit overvalued, and so foreign investors are steadily selling. That is putting a bit of pressure on the rupee as well. But there's nothing to panic about. There's nothing to worry about. The RBI is allowing this depreciation. It's almost encouraging the depreciation in order to provide a little bit of support to exporters who are suffering the impact of the very high US tariff rates. There are no significant implications. It basically means that imports will become a little more expensive. Exports will be cheaper in the sense that for foreigners, we'll be able to produce our products cheaper than they would be than our competitors would be producing them, and therefore our exports will receive a little bit of a boost, uh, um, even in the U.S. market where they're facing very high tariffs. But in general, they'll have a more favorable situation in all markets other than the U.S. in particular, uh, and of course, import prices will go up, but that isn't such a concern at the moment because inflation in the latest month was just 0.25%. It's likely to stay below 1% for most of the next 12 months. So, with inflation extremely low, there is no real problem with a depreciating rupee, because higher import prices will not really have too much of an impact on pushing up headline inflation rates. There's no need to come back. In many developing countries, including in many of our competitor currencies, their depreciation has been a lot greater than ours over, say, the last 10, 15, 20 years. For instance, I'll give you one example of our neighbor, Sri Lanka, for instance. When I was in graduate school in America 35 years ago, the Sri Lanka rupee was about 8 Sri Lankan rupees to the dollar. The Indian rupee was about 13 rupees to the dollar. Today, the Indian rupee is close to 90 rupees to the dollar. The Sri Lankan is around 250 rupees to the dollar. So these things happen, and it is there's nothing to reverse. There's nothing to come back from. It's not a disaster. The currency value is just a value of foreign currency. That's it. There is nothing to. It's not a matter of national shame. It's not a matter of national pride to have a strong appreciating currency. We have a slight current account deficit. We have a fairly large trade deficit every month. So, from that perspective, it makes sense for India to continue to depreciate the currency. Some years it depreciates faster, some years it appreciates a little bit. In 2021, it appreciated. So there are years in which it will appreciate a bit, but that is not the norm. In developing countries or emerging markets, you typically do see steady depreciation of the currency. There's nothing to worry about and nothing to bang our heads on about.